These winter horror stories all took place during the cold months of the season, making them even more horrifying. The Christmas Ghost Story, The Deadly Smartphone. As dusk fell, the quiet, small apartment building was suddenly filled with bizarre, violent noises of smashing. Michael was using his new iPhone to crack walnuts. This smartphone, with its metallic frame, was as versatile as advertised, and Michael was exploring its new features. The apartment was mainly rented to those working nearby. Michael had only one neighbor, Emily, and her roommate. Emily was stunning, a true millennial with an attractive and stylish appearance, exactly Michael's type. Thus, he was eagerly trying to win her affections, but Emily's playful responses left him unsure of her true feelings. Lying in bed, munching on a few walnuts, Michael reveled in his simple pleasure. Navigating the digital world on his smartphone was his favorite pastime. His room had a full-length mirror, and being quite vain, he often took selfies and posted them on Instagram. Suddenly, a multimedia message lit up the large screen. Opening it, Michael nearly dropped his phone in shock. It showed a woman's face, or rather what was left of it, her mouth torn apart, her eyes glued to her nose. Michael quickly exited the image. The text below read, "Feeling good, come play with me." Dismissing it as a prank or malware, a common occurrence in the digital age, he deleted the message. Tossing the phone on the bed, Michael stripped and headed for a shower. "I love showers, keeps the skin nice," he muttered. Whistling, he washed away the day's fatigue. The small bathroom quickly filled with steam, becoming uncomfortably hot. The steam formed a silhouette of a tall man on the wall, and Michael started to pose playfully. Then his gaze froze. He could vaguely see a black spherical shape on the wall, a woman's head. Panicking, he looked around the tiny space, but there was nothing. Ignoring his unease, Michael bolted out of the bathroom, diving into bed. His heart was racing. "Get a grip, Mike. What's there to be scared of?" he scolded himself, but couldn't shake off the feeling of dread. He tried to distract himself, then a loud knocking sound. Michael's eyes widened as he stared at the door, his earlier calm shattered. Wrapping a towel around himself, he cautiously approached the door. Peeking through the crack, he saw a familiar face. "It's rude to spy on people through the door," Emily's voice teased from the other side. Opening the door, Michael met Emily's bright eyes. "I'm stepping out. Could you give my keys to my roommate when she returns? By the way, you look pale." "What's up?" she said, noticing his state. "Just feeling a bit under the weather," Michael replied with a forced smile. Emily made a funny face and bounced away. Michael watched her leave, his mind momentarily diverted. The tranquility was short-lived. His phone rang with an unknown number. "Hello, Michael, remember me? Let's play, ha ha ha." The voice was eerie, echoing as if from an abyss. Michael's heart leapt to his throat. He quickly hung up. The mystery woman's voice seemed familiar, yet he couldn't place it. A chill swept through the room. Michael shivered, feeling an ominous presence. Then his friend Danny called. "Michael, join me in hell." "Hey!" Michael stepped back, pale-faced. Suddenly, Danny's voice returned to normal. "Scared you, huh? Man, you've become so timid. Got spooked by a prank? Ha ha!" Relieved yet annoyed, Michael ended the call. He shook his head, dismissing the earlier incidents as Halloween pranks. Trying to shake off his unease, Michael focused on planning a Halloween gift for Emily. As he pondered, his phone pinged with a new multimedia message. Another disturbing image, this time of a bloodied man's face with a message, "Michael, remember me. Come play." Frustrated, Michael mused over the bizarre trend of macabre Halloween pranks. Suddenly, he remembered a trip a year ago. He had shared a tent with a man named David and his girlfriend, Anna. He left the trip early due to work, but they had exchanged numbers. The woman in the earlier message, it had to be Anna. Michael dialed David's number only to be greeted by an elderly woman. She informed him that David and Anna had died in a landslide during a trip a year ago. The news sent a chill down his spine. The room grew eerily cold, and the light bulb flickered ominously. Huddled in a corner, Michael clutched his phone, terrified. The room echoed with the laughter of David and Anna. "Michael, come play with us, ha ha." The mirror began to shake, slowly turning towards him, revealing the grotesque faces of David and Anna. "No, stay back," Michael stammered, retreating further. With a crash, the mirror shattered as he hurled his phone at it. Everything went silent. At 10 o'clock, Emily's roommate, Laura, found the door ajar. Inside, Michael was cornered, his eyes bulging with terror, his face twisted in horror. His hand clutched his phone, embedded in his head, still vibrating. Blood coated the screen, seeping deeper with each vibration. Brain matter oozed down his face. Detective Johnson surveyed the scene, concluding it was a suicide. Michael had inflicted fatal injury using his phone. The case was closed. Emily and Laura moved out soon after, and at dusk the quiet apartment still echoed with the sound of someone cracking walnuts. The Haunted House Bet, a night of terror. My name is Ethan. I work at a government office, but have always been fascinated by writing essays, poetry, fiction, and especially horror stories. There's something about the genre that captivates me. Yesterday, Chris, a childhood friend, called me in a panic. I couldn't get much out of him over the phone, so we decided to meet up the next day at a local diner near our residential area. "Do you know about haunted houses?" Chris asked, nervously downing his glass of vodka, his eyes searching mine. I wasn't sure what he was driving at, so I didn't answer immediately. "You always write about supernatural stuff. You must know," he insisted, looking desperate. I had never seen him like this before, and nodded, acknowledging his words. Relieved, Chris continued, "I'm in a tough spot, and I need your help." Chris and I share a close bond, having known each other for nearly 20 years. We went our separate ways after middle school, but kept in touch. While I joined the government sector, Chris ventured into advertising and started his own company. As I didn't earn much, Chris would usually handle our outings. Given his exposure to the outside world, Chris was more worldly and stable. Seeing him so distressed now made me equally anxious. I thought to myself, as long as it's nothing immoral, I'll help him. "What's going on?" I asked, offering him a cigarette. After a long drag, Chris explained his situation. Chris continued, "You know, working in advertising is tough. We're always hustling for the next deal. I recently landed a potential big client, a major company headed by Mr. Johnson. This deal could bring in a significant sum, but there's a catch." He paused, clearly troubled. "Last week, Mr. Johnson invited representatives from 4 well-known advertising firms in our city to discuss the contract. The catch is, he loves eccentric challenges. He's chosen a location for our meeting, Maplewood Estates. It's rumored to have a haunted house." I listened intently as Chris described Maplewood Estates. The place had a gruesome story. A couple lived there, and due to misunderstandings and external influences, their relationship turned sour. One night, in a fit of rage, the husband accidentally killed his wife and later dismembered her body. Ever since, neighbors reported hearing a woman's cries from the house, and it was labeled a haunted house. "The challenge from Mr. Johnson is bizarre," Chris continued. "He proposed that one representative from each firm spend a night in the haunted house. The one who makes it through will get the contract, plus a $20,000 bonus." I was stunned. "And you agreed to this?" I asked in disbelief. Chris nodded, his expression grim. "I'm drowning in debt, Ethan. This might be my only way out." Feeling his despair, I reluctantly agreed to accompany him. "When do we do this?" I asked. "Tomorrow night," he replied. The next day, I met Chris with my backpack and a flashlight. Essentials for a night in a potentially haunted place. Chris raised an eyebrow at my preparations, but didn't comment. As dusk settled, Chris and I arrived at Maplewood Estates. The area was eerily quiet, almost deserted. We received a text directing us to the specific house, the so-called haunted house. Inside, we found only a table, chairs, and some candles. The atmosphere was unsettling. Mr. Johnson explained the rules. Spend the entire night in the house and the contract is yours, along with a hefty bonus. He had set up cameras to record the event. "It's all in good fun," he said with a sly smile. Despite my skepticism about ghosts, I couldn't shake off the feeling of dread. Chris and I settled in, trying to make light of the situation. We joked, ate some food we'd brought, and sipped on bourbon to steady our nerves. Night deepened, and strange sounds began to permeate the silence. There were knocks on the door, followed by a woman's mournful cries. Chills ran down my spine. We hesitated, but eventually decided to investigate. Upon opening the door, we found nothing but the cold night air. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Emily, Mr. Johnson's daughter. She confessed to being part of her father's eccentric plan, having faked the sounds to scare us. We all laughed it off, though the tension lingered. As we continued to chat, the night wore on, but then the inexplicable happened. The cries resumed, this time more intense, more real. Emily's face drained of color. She was clearly not behind this. We glanced at each other, unease turning into fear. "Should we check again?" I suggested, though my voice betrayed my reluctance. Gathering our courage, we approached the door again. The air felt heavy, the silence around us oppressive. As we reached for the doorknob, the door creaked open on its own, revealing the dark, empty hallway. A sense of dread washed over us. We stepped out, the flashlight in my hand casting eerie shadows on the walls. The crying had stopped, leaving only the sound of our own nervous breathing. We searched the ground floor, finding nothing unusual, and decided to head back inside. No sooner had we sat down than the cries started again, louder and more desperate. Emily clung to Chris, her face pale with fear. I tried to rationalize the sounds, but deep down, I felt the terror creeping in. We should stay together, I suggested, trying to sound more confident than I felt. We huddled close, trying to ignore the chilling sounds that seemed to surround us. As the night progressed, the atmosphere grew more oppressive. The once comforting light of the candles now cast grotesque shadows, making the room feel like a trap. We jumped at every sound, every shift in the air. Then, in the midst of our fear, the door flew open with a bang. Standing there was a figure, familiar yet terrifyingly different. It was Emily, or so it seemed. But we had left her inside, hadn't we? Our hearts raced as we realized the impossibility of the situation. The Emily inside the room looked just as shocked, her eyes wide with fear. The figure at the door let out a scream that pierced the night. A sound so filled with anguish, it felt like it could rend the soul. In that moment, we knew this was no prank, no game. We were in the presence of something unexplainable, something truly haunted. The realization hit us like a wave, and we stood frozen, caught between disbelief and terror. The room fell into chaos. Chris, Emily, and I were paralyzed with fear, unable to comprehend the situation. The figure at the door, a doppelganger of Emily, seemed to be suffering, trapped in an endless loop of pain and sorrow. Emily, the real one, whispered, "This can't be happening. This is just a house, just a game." Her voice trembled, echoing our disbelief. I mustered all the courage I had. "We need to leave now," I urged, grabbing the backpack and flashlight. Chris and Emily followed closely, all of us moving quickly toward the exit. The house seemed to resist our departure, the air growing colder, the shadows darker. As we reached the door, a deafening silence enveloped us. The cries had stopped, but the feeling of dread intensified. We burst out into the night, the cold air hitting our faces, a stark contrast to the suffocating atmosphere inside. We didn't stop until we reached a safe distance from the house. Panting and disoriented, we looked back at the building. It sat there, dark and silent, as if nothing had happened. But we knew better. We had experienced something inexplicable, something that defied logic and reality. Chris, still shaking, managed to say, "I don't care about the contract anymore. That was something else." Emily nodded in agreement, her usual playful demeanor gone, replaced by a look of deep contemplation. "I never believed in ghosts or haunted houses until now," she said softly. We decided not to speak of this night again, to leave it as an unexplained chapter in our lives. But deep down, we knew we had touched the edge of an unknown world, a world that was better left unexplored. As the first rays of dawn broke the horizon, we went our separate ways, each lost in our thoughts. The haunted house of Maplewood Estates remained a mystery, a chilling reminder of the night we faced our deepest fears. And so the story ends with a warning: never underestimate the unknown. For sometimes the truth is stranger, and more terrifying than fiction.